Good morning, World Tours. My name is Jamie. How can I help you?
Good morning. I want some information on self-drive tours in the USA. Could you send me a brochure?
Of course. Could I have your name, please?
Andrea Brown.
Thank you. And your address?
24 Ardley Road.
Can you spell that?
ARDLEIGH Road.
Postcode?
BH5 2OP.
Thanks. And can I have your phone number?
Is a mobile all right?
Fine.
It's 07786 643 091.
Thank you. And can I ask you where you heard about World Tours? From a friend, or did you see an advert somewhere?
No, I read about you in the newspaper.
OK, I'll get the brochures in the post to you, but can I give you some information over the phone? What kinds of things do you want to do on your holiday?
I'm interested in going to California with my family. I've got 2 children, and we want to hire a car.
OK, we have a couple of self-drive tours there visiting different places of interest in California. The first one begins in Los Angeles, and there's plenty of time to visit some of the theme parks there.
That's something on my children's list, so I'd want to include that.
Good. Then you drive to San Francisco. From San Francisco, you can drive to Yosemite Park, where you spend a couple of nights. You can choose to stay in a lodge or on the campsite.
I don't like the idea of staying in a tent. It'd be too hot.
Right. And the tour ends in Las Vegas.
OK.
The other trip we can arrange is slightly different. It starts in San Francisco, then you drive south to Cambria.
Someone told me there's a really nice castle near Cambria. Will we go near that?
Hearst Castle is on that road, so you could stop there.
Good. I'd like to do that. Does this trip also go into the desert?
No, it continues to Santa Monica, where most people like to stop and do some shopping.
We have enough of that at home, so that doesn't interest us.
OK. Well, you could go straight on to San Diego.
That's good for beaches, isn't it?
That's right. That's a good place to relax, and your children might like to visit the zoo before flying home.
I don't think so. We want some time for sunbathing and swimming. So, how many days are the trips, and how much do they cost?
The first one I told you about is a self-drive tour through California, which lasts 12 days and covers 2,020 kilometres. The shortest journey is 206 kilometres, and the longest is 632 kilometres. The cost is £525 per person. That includes accommodation, car rental, and a flight, but no meals.
OK. And the other trip?
That lasts 9 days, but you spend only 3 days on the road. You cover about 980 kilometres altogether.
So is that cheaper then?
Yes, it's almost £100 cheaper. It's £429 per person, which is a good deal.
So that covers accommodation and car hire. What about flights?
They aren't included, but these hotels offer dinner in the price.
OK. Well, thank you very much. I'll be in touch when I've had a chance to look at the brochure.
I'm pleased to help. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
One thing all our members appreciate about us is that we take very good care of them. This starts on day 1 with your personal assessment. You are asked to fill in a questionnaire giving details of any health problems. One of our personal trainers will then go through this with you. The trainer will then take you through the safety rules for using the equipment in the fitness suite. During your next exercise session, a personal trainer will work with you to make sure you understand these. It's very important to do this because we really do want to avoid having any sports injuries. There's a lot more to looking after yourself than simply lifting weights. At the end of the personal assessment, the trainer will draw up a plan outlining what you should try to achieve within a 6-week period. This will then be reviewed at the end of the 6 weeks. Now, I'll just quickly run through the types of membership we have available. All members must pay a joining fee of £90 in addition to the rates for the monthly membership fees. Gold membership entitles you to free entry at all LP clubs. There are now LP clubs in all major cities and towns, so if you travel a lot, this will be a great advantage. Individual gold membership costs £50 a month, and joint membership for you and your partner will cost £75. Premium membership is for professional people whose work commitments make it difficult for them to use the club during the day, and so LP gives booking preferences to Premier members at peak times. This means you'll find it easier to book the sessions at times that suit you. Reciprocal arrangements with other LP clubs are available to Premier members. Premium membership is for individuals only, but you'll be sent passes for guests every month. The monthly fee is £65. You don't have to have any special clothes or equipment when you visit the club. We provide robes and hairdryers in the changing rooms, but it's very important to remember your photo card, because you won't be able to get in without it.
Hello, Professor. I'm John Wishart. I'm working on my entry for the Global Design Competition. My tutor said you might be able to help me with it.
Ah, yes, I got a copy of your drawings. Come in and tell me about it. What sort of competition is it?
Well, it's an international design competition, and we have to come up with a new design for a typical domestic kitchen appliance.
I see. And are there any special conditions? Does it have to save energy, for example?
Actually, that was the focus in last year's competition. This year's different. We have to adopt an innovative approach to existing technology, using it in a way that hasn't been thought of before.
I see. That sounds tricky. And what kitchen appliance have you chosen?
Well, I decided to choose the dishwasher.
Interesting. What made you choose that?
Well, they're an everyday kitchen appliance in most Australian houses, but they're all pretty boring and almost identical to each other. I think some people will be prepared to pay a little extra for something that looks different.
It's a nice idea. I see you've called your design the rock pool. Why is that?
Basically because it looks like the rock pools you find on a beach. The top is made of glass so that you can look down into it.
And there's a stone at the bottom. Is that just for decoration?
Actually, it does have a function. Instead of pushing a button, you turn the stone.
So it's really just a novel way of starting the dishwasher.
That's right.
It's a really nice design, but what makes it innovative?
Well, I decided to make a dishwasher that uses carbon dioxide.
In place of water and detergent? How will you manage that?
The idea is to pressurise the carbon dioxide so that it becomes a liquid. The fluid is then released into the dishwasher where it cleans the dishes all by itself.
Sounds like a brilliant idea. Your system will totally do away with the need for strong detergents. So what happens once the dishes are clean?
Well, to allow them to dry, the liquid carbon dioxide and the waste materials all go to an area called the holding chamber. That's where the liquid is depressurised and so it reverts to a gas. Then the oil and grease are separated out and sent to the waste system.
It sounds like you've thought it all out very thoroughly. So what happens to the carbon dioxide once the process is complete? Not wasted, I hope.
Actually, that's where the real savings are made. The carbon dioxide is sent back to the cylinder and can be used again and again.
What a terrific idea. Do you think it will ever be built?
Probably not, but that's okay.
Well, I'm sure a lot of positive things will come out of your design. Now, you seem to have thought about everything, so what exactly did you need me to help you with?
Well, my design has made it to the final stage of the competition, and in a few months' time I have to give a presentation, and that's the part I was hoping you could help me with.
Right, well that should be easy enough. What have you managed to do so far?
Well, I've got detailed drawings to show how it will work, and I've also written a 500-word paper on it.
I see. Well, if you want to stand a good chance of winning, you really need a model of the machine.
Yes, I thought I might, but I'm having a few problems.
What's the main difficulty so far? Let me guess. Is it the materials?
Yes. I want it to look professional, but everything that's top quality is also very expensive.
Look, projects like this are very important to us. They really help lift our profile. So why don't you talk to the university about a grant?
Oh.
I can help you fill out the application forms if you like.
Oh, that would be great.
You'd better show me this paper you've written as well. For a global competition such as this, you need to make sure the technical details you've given are accurate and thorough.
Oh, that would be a great help.
Is there anything else I can do?
Well, I'm really nervous.
Today, we continue our series on ecology and conservation with a look at a particularly endangered member of the black bear family. 1 in 10 black bears is actually born with a white coat, which is the result of a special gene that surfaces in a few. Local people have named it the spirit bear, and according to the legends of these communities, its snowy fur brings with it a special power. Because of this, it has always been highly regarded by them, so much that they do not speak of seeing it to anyone else. It is their way of protecting it when strangers visit the area. The white bear's habitat is quite interesting. The bear's strong relationship with the old-growth rainforest is a complex one. The white bear relies on the huge, centuries-old trees in the forest in many ways. For example, the old-growth trees have extremely long roots that help prevent erosion of the soil along the banks of the many fish streams. Keeping these banks intact is important because these streams are home to salmon, which are the bear's main food source. In return, the bear's feeding habits nurture the forest. As the bears eat the salmon, they discard the skin and bones in great amounts on the forest floor, which provide vital nutrients. These produce lush vegetation that sustains thousands of other types of life forms, from birds to insects and more. Today, the spirit bear lives off the coast of the province of British Columbia on a few islands. There is great concern for their survival, since it is estimated that less than 200 of these white bears remain. The best way to protect them is to make every effort to preserve the delicate balance of their forest environment. In other words, their ecosystem. The greatest threat to the bear's existence is the loss of its habitat. Over many years, logging companies have stripped the land by cutting down a large number of trees. In addition, they have built roads which have fractured the areas where the bear usually feeds, and many hibernation sites have also been lost. The logging of the trees along the streams has damaged the places where the bears fish. To make matters worse, the number of salmon in those streams is declining because there is no legal limit on fishing at the moment. All these influences have a negative impact on the spirit bear's very existence, which is made all the more fragile by the fact that reproduction among these bears has always been disappointingly low. And so, what's the situation going forward? Community organizations, environmental groups, and the British Columbia government are now working together on the problem. The government is now requiring logging companies to adopt a better logging method, which is a positive step. However, these measures alone may not be sufficient to ensure a healthy population of the spirit bear in the future. Other steps also need to be taken. While it is important to maintain the spirit bear's habitat, there also needs to be more emphasis on its expansion. The move is justified as it will also create space for other bears that are losing their homes.
Excuse me,
Yes?
I wonder if you could spare a few minutes to do a survey on transport. It won't take long.
No, that's fine.
Oh, lovely. The survey is on behalf of the local council. They'd like to know about what transport you use and any suggestions for improvement. Can I start by asking you how you travel to town today?
Sure, I came on the bus.
Great. Now, can I get a few details about yourself?
OK.
What's your name?
It's Louisa
Yes.
Hardy.
Can you spell that, please?
Yes, it's Hardie.
Great. Thanks. And can I have your address?
It's 19 Whitestone Road.
Oh, right. I know that area. It's Bradfield, isn't it?
That's right.
Is the postcode GT7?
It's actually GT8 2LC.
Great. And could I ask what your job is? Are you a student?
I've actually just finished my training. I'm a hairdresser.
Oh, right. And one more question in this section. What is the reason for you coming into town today?
Actually, it's not for shopping today, which would be my normal reason, but to see the dentist.
Right. Thanks. Now, in this last section, I'd like you to give us some ideas about the facilities and arrangements in the city for getting to and from work. Any suggestions you have for improvements?
Well, something I've thought about for some time is that when I do walk and I'm doing a later shift, I think the lighting should be better.
Yes, good point.
And of course, I think it's a real shame they've been cutting down on the number of footpaths. They should have more of those. Then people would walk more.
Yes, right.
And I don't think there are enough trains. That's why I don't use them. You have to wait so long.
Thanks. And finally, I'd like to ask your opinion on cycling. As you may know, there's a drive in the city to get more people to cycle to work.
Right.
But we realise that there are things which the council, but also employers, might do to help encourage workers to cycle to work.
Yeah. Well, I have thought about it, and where I work, there are no safe places to leave your bikes.
OK.
And also, I'd have to cycle uphill, and on a hot day, I'd arrive at work pretty sweaty, so I think I'd need a shower somewhere at work.
Right.
And I suppose the last thing is that I wouldn't be all that confident about cycling on such busy roads. I think I'd like to see you offering training for that. You know, I'd feel a lot better about starting if that was the case.
Well, that's very helpful. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Bye.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to say a little about two exciting new developments in the city: the Brackenside open-air swimming pool and the Children's Adventure Playground in Central Park. As many of you may know, the idea for these initiatives came from you, the public, in the extensive consultation exercise which the City Council conducted last year. And they have been realised using money from the SWRDC, the South West Regional Development Commission. First of all, Brackenside Pool. As many of the older members of the audience will remember, there used to be a wonderful open-air pool on the seafront 30 years ago, but it had to close when it was judged to be unsafe. For the design of this new heated pool, we were very happy to secure the talents of internationally renowned architect Ellen Wendon, who has managed to combine a charming 1930s design, which fits in so well with many of the other buildings in the area, with up-to-the-minute features such as a recycling system, the only one of its kind in the world, which enables seawater to be used in the pool. Now, there's been quite a bit of discussion in the local press about whether there would be enough room for the number of visitors we're hoping to attract, but the design is deceptive, and there have been rigorous checks about capacity. Also, just in case you were wondering, we're on schedule for a June the 15th opening date, and well within budget. A testimony to the excellent work of local contractors Hickman's. We hope that as many people as possible will be there on June the 15th. We have engaged award-winning actress Coral White to declare the pool open, and there'll be drinks and snacks available at the poolside. There'll also be a competition for the public to decide on the sculpture we plan to have at the entrance. You will decide which famous historical figure from the city we should have. And now, moving on to the Central Park Playground, which we're pleased to announce has just won the Douglas Award for Safety. The news came through only last week. The unique design is based on the concept of the global village, with the playground being divided into 6 areas showing different parts of the world, each with a representative feature. For example, there is a section on Asia, and this is represented by rides and equipment in the shape of snakes, orangutans, tigers and so on, fauna native to the forests of the region. Moving south to the Antarctic, we couldn't run to an ice rink, I'm afraid, but opted instead for climbing blocks in the shape of mountains. I thought they could have had slides for the glaciers, but the designers did want to avoid being too literal. Then on to South America, and here the theme is El Dorado, games replicating the search for mines full of precious stones. And then, moving up to North America, here there was considerable debate. I know the contribution of cinema and jazz was considered, but the designers finally opted for rockets and the International Space Station. Eastwards to Europe then, and perhaps the most traditional choice of all the areas, medieval castles and other fortifications. Then last but not least, moving south to Africa, and a whole set of wonderful mosaics and trails to represent the great rivers of this fascinating and varied continent. Now, the opening date for our global playground is the 10th of July, and again, we'd love to see you there. So, make a date and come and see this magnificent, original new amenity right in the heart of the city.
Right, well, for our presentation, shall I start with the early life of Tor Heyerdahl?
Sure. Why don't you begin with describing the type of boy he was, especially his passion for collecting things?
That's right. He had his own little museum. And I think it's unusual for children to develop their own values and not join in their parents' hobbies. I'm thinking of how Heyerdahl wouldn't go hunting with his dad, for example.
Yeah, he preferred to learn about nature by listening to his mother read to him. And quite early on, he knew he wanted to become an explorer when he grew up. That came from his camping trips he went on in Norway, I think.
No, it was climbing that he spent his time on as a young man.
Oh, right. After university, he married a classmate, and together they decided to experience living on a small island to find out how harsh weather conditions shaped people's lifestyles.
As part of their preparation, before they left home, they learnt basic survival skills, like building a shelter. I guess they needed that knowledge in order to live wild in a remote location with few inhabitants, cut off by the sea, which is what they were aiming to do.
An important part of your talk should be the radical theory Heyerdahl formed from examining mysterious ancient carvings that he happened to find on the island. I think you should finish with that.
Okay.
All right, Victor, so after your part, I'll talk about Tor Heyerdahl's adult life, continuing from the theory he had about Polynesian migration. Up until that time, of course, academics had believed that humans first migrated to the islands in Polynesia from Asia in the west.
Yes, they thought that travel from the east was impossible because of the huge empty stretch of ocean that lies between the islands and the nearest inhabited land.
Yes, but Heyerdahl spent ages studying the cloud movements, ocean currents, and wind patterns to find if it was actually possible. And another argument was that there was no tradition of large shipbuilding in the communities lying to the east of Polynesia. But Heyerdahl knew they made lots of coastal voyages in locally built canoes.
Yes, or sailing on rafts, as was shown by the long voyage that Heyerdahl did next. It was an incredibly risky journey to undertake. Sometimes I wonder if he did that trip for private reasons, you know? To show others that he could have spectacular adventures. What do you think, Olivia?
Well, I think it was more a matter of simply trying out his idea, to see if migration from the east was possible.
Yes, that's probably it. And the poor guy suffered a bit at that time because the war forced him to stop his work for some years.
Yes. When he got started again and planned his epic voyage, do you think it was important to him that he achieve it before anyone else did?
I haven't read anywhere that that was his motivation. The most important factor seems to have been that he used only ancient techniques and local materials to build his raft.
Yes. I wonder how fast it went.
Well, it took them 97 days from South America to the Pacific Islands.
And after that, Heyerdahl went to Easter Island, didn't he? We should mention the purpose of that trip. I think he sailed there in a boat made out of reeds.
No, that was later on in Egypt, Olivia.
Oh, yes, that's right.
But what he wanted to do was talk to the local people about their old stone carvings and then make one himself to learn more about the process.
I see. Well, what a great life. Even though many of his theories have been disproven, he certainly left a lasting impression on many disciplines, didn't he? To my mind, he was the first person to establish what modern academics call practical archaeology. I mean that they try to recreate something from the past today, like he did with his raft trip. It's unfortunate that his ideas about where Polynesians originated from have been completely discredited.
Yes. Right, well, I'll prepare a PowerPoint slide at the end that acknowledges our sources. I mainly used The Life and Work of Tor Heyerdahl by William Oliver. I thought the research methods he used were very sound, although I must say I found the overall tone somewhat old-fashioned. I think they need to do a new, revised edition.
Yeah, I agree. What about the subject matter? I found it really challenging.
Well, it's a complex issue.
I thought the book had lots of good points. What did you think of the illustration?
Well, I've been talking to managers in a number of businesses and reading surveys about the future of management. And what I'm going to present in this seminar is a few ideas about how the activity is likely to change in the next 10 years. It isn't a scientific statistical analysis, just some ideas for us to discuss. One area I want to mention is business markets, and I'm sure a really significant development will be a major increase in competition, with companies from all around the world trying to sell similar products. Consumers will have much more choice. For instance, food products sold in Australia might be manufactured in the USA, China, Finland, and dozens of other countries. At the same time, mergers and takeovers mean that governments are actually losing power to major global corporations. We can probably all think of companies that exert a great deal of influence, which may be good for consumers. A third point I want to make about markets is that in the rapidly expanding economies, such as India, China, Brazil, and Russia, demand is growing very fast. This is putting pressure on resources all over the world. I think businesses are becoming more open to external influences. In particular, companies are consulting customers more and more before making their business decisions. Companies are finding out what they want and providing it, instead of making products and then trying to sell them, which is the model of years ago. Another influence is that concerns about the environment will force manufacturers to extend product life cycles to reduce the amount of pollution and waste. And, in some cases, regulation will need to be strengthened. Many societies are much more fluid and democratic, and the structure of companies is changing to reflect that. I think we're going to see a greater emphasis within companies on teams created with a specific project in mind. And when they're completed, the teams will be disbanded and new ones formed. More and more people see work as simply one part of their lifestyle, and not the most important one. And as the workforce is shrinking in some countries, businesses are having to compete for staff instead of being able to choose among a lot of applicants. Typical examples that will attract and retain staff are traditional ones like flexible hours and, something that has been made possible by advances in technology, remote working, with people based at their home, abroad, or almost anywhere they choose. Management styles will almost certainly continue to change. Senior managers will require a lot more than the efficiency that they've always needed. Above all, they'll need great skills in leadership so that their organization can initiate and respond to change in a fast-moving world where they face lots of competing requirements and potential conflicts. In most of the world, the senior managers of large businesses are mainly men in their 50s and 60s. The predominant style of management will almost certainly become more consultative and collaborative, caused, above all, by more women moving into senior management positions. Many of the changes are influenced by developments in the wider economy. The traditional emphasis of business was manufacturing, and of course the service sector is very important. But we shouldn't overlook the growing financial contribution of IP, that is, intellectual property. Some books and films generate enormous sums from the sale of related DVDs, music, games, clothes, and so on. Another point I'd like to make is that although I've been talking about companies, one trend that they have to face is the move away from people working for the same employer for years. Instead, more and more people are becoming self-employed to gain the freedom and control over their lives that they're unlikely to get from being employed. Okay, well, that's all I want to say, so let's open it up for discussion.
Good morning. Welcome to the Early Learning Childcare Centre. How may I help you?
Hi, I spoke to you last week about enrolling my daughter for next year.
Oh, yes. I'll just get some details from you. So, you're her mother?
That's right.
And can I have your name?
It's Carol Smith.
And your daughter's name?
It's Kate.
Now, we have several groups at the centre and we cater for children from 3 to 5 years old. How old is your daughter?
She's 3 now, but she turns 4 next month.
I'll put 4 down because that's how old she'll be when she starts.
Fine. She's so excited about her birthday and coming to the centre.
Oh, that's good to hear. And what's your address?
It's 46 Wombat Road. That's WOMBAT. Woodside 4032.
And what's the phone number?
Oh, it's 3345 9865.
So, have you decided on the days you would like to bring your daughter here?
I'd prefer Monday and Wednesday if possible.
I'll check. Monday's fine, but I think the centre is already full for Wednesday. Yes. Sorry, it seems to be a very popular day. We can offer you a Thursday or a Friday as well.
Oh dear. I suppose Thursday would be all right because she has swimming on Friday.
OK, got that. Because a lot of parents work, we do offer flexible start and finish times. We're open from 7:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. What time would you like your daughter to start?
I need to get to work in the city by 9, so I'll drop her off at 8:30. You're pretty close to the city here, so that should give me plenty of time to get there.
That's fine. Now, we also need to decide which group she'll be in. We have 2 different groups and they're divided up according to age. There's the green group, which is for 3 to 4-year-olds, and then there's the red group, which is for 4 to 5-year-olds.
She's quite mature for her age and she can already write her name and read a little.
Well, I'll put her in the red group and we can always change her to the green one if there are any problems.
That sounds fine.
OK, let's move on to meals. We can provide breakfast, lunch and dinner. As she's finishing pretty early, she won't need dinner. Will you give her breakfast before she comes?
Yes, she'll only need lunch.
Now, does she have any medical conditions we need to know about? Does she have asthma or any hearing problems, for example?
No, but she does need to wear glasses.
Oh, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, she's pretty good about wearing them. She can't see much without them.
Right. OK. Now, I also need emergency contact details.
So what sort of information do you need?
Just the name and number of a friend or family member we can contact in case we can't get hold of you at any time.
OK. That'd better be my sister, Jenny Ball. That's BALL. Her phone number is 3346 7523.
Great. So she is the child's aunt?
Yes, that's right.
I'll make a note of that as well. Now, is there anything you'd like to ask?
What about payment? How much are the fees each term?
Well, for 2 days and the hours you've chosen, that will be $450 altogether.
OK, and do I have to pay that now?
No, we send out invoices once the children start at the centre. You can choose to pay at the end of each term, or we do offer a slightly discounted rate if you pay every month.
Oh, I'll do that then. I find it easier to budget that way, and I'm not used to the term dates just yet.
Good. It makes it a lot simpler for us as well. Well, that's everything. Would you like me to show you around the centre? We can go.
Today we're pleased to have on the show Alice Bussell from the Dolphin Conservation Trust. Tell us about the trust, Alice.
Well, obviously its purpose is to protect dolphins in seas all around the world. It tries to raise people's awareness of the problems these marine creatures are suffering because of pollution and other threats. It started 10 years ago, and it's one of the fastest growing animal charities in the country, although it's still fairly small compared with the big players in animal protection. We're particularly proud of the work we do in education. Last year, we visited a huge number of schools in different parts of the country, going round to talk to children and young people aged from 5 to 18. In fact, about 35% of our members are children.
Oh.
The charity uses its money to support campaigns, for example, for changes in fishing policy and so forth. It hopes soon to be able to employ its first full-time biologist with dolphin expertise to monitor populations. Of course, many people give their services on a voluntary basis, and we now have volunteers working in observation, office work, and other things. I should also tell you about the award we won from the Charity Commission last year for our work in education. Although it's not meant an enormous amount of money for us, it has made our activities even more widely publicised and understood. In the long term, it may not bring in extra members, but we're hoping it'll have this effect.
Is it possible to see dolphins in UK waters?
Yes, in several locations. And we have a big project in the east part of Scotland. This has long been a haven for dolphins because it has very little shipping. However, that may be about to change soon because oil companies want to increase exploration there. We're campaigning against this because although there'll be little pollution from oil, exploration creates a lot of underwater noise. It means the dolphins can't rest and socialise. This is how I became interested in dolphin conservation in the first place. I had never seen one, and I hadn't been particularly interested in them at school. Then I came across this story about a family of dolphins who had to leave their home in the Moray Firth because of the oil companies, and about a child who campaigned to save them. I couldn't put the book down. I was hooked.
I'm sure our listeners will want to find out what they can do to help. You mentioned the Adopt a Dolphin scheme. Can you tell us about that?
Of course. People can choose one of our dolphins to sponsor. They receive a picture of it and news updates. I'd like to tell you about 4 which are currently being adopted by our members: Moondancer, Echo, Kiwi and Samson. Unfortunately, Echo is being rather elusive this year and hasn't yet been sighted by our observers, but we remain optimistic that he'll be out there soon. All the others have been out in force. Samson and Moondancer are often photographed together, but it's Kiwi who's our real character, as she seems to love coming up close for the cameras, and we've captured her on film hundreds of times. They all have their own personalities. Moondancer is very elegant and curves out and into the water very smoothly, whereas Samson has a lot of energy. He's always leaping out of the water with great vigour. You'd probably expect him to be the youngest. He's not quite. That's Kiwi. But Samson's the latest of our dolphins to be chosen for the scheme. Kiwi makes a lot of noise, so we can often pick her out straight away. Echo and Moondancer are noisy too, but Moondancer's easy to find because she has a particularly large fin on her back, which makes her easy to identify. So, yes, they're all very different.
Well, they sound a fascinating group. And how would you go about...
Hi, Rob. How's the course going?
Oh, hi, Mia. Yeah, great. I can't believe the first term's nearly over.
I saw your group's performance last night at the student theatre. It was good.
Really? Yeah, but now we have to write a report on the whole thing, an in-depth analysis. I don't know where to start. Like, I have to write about the role I played, the doctor, how I developed the character.
Well, what was your starting point?
My grandfather was a doctor before he retired, and I just based it on him.
Okay, but how? Did you talk to him about it?
He must have all sorts of stories, but he never says much about his work, even now. He has a sort of authority, though.
So, how did you manage to capture that?
I'd visualise what he must have been like in the past when he was sitting in his consulting room listening to his patients.
Okay, so that's what you explain in your report.
Right.
Then there's the issue of atmosphere. So in the first scene we needed to know how boring life was in the doctor's village in the 1950s. So when the curtain went up on the first scene in the waiting room, there was that long silence before anyone spoke. And then people kept saying the same thing over and over, like, cold, isn't it?
Yes, and everyone wore grey and brown and just sat in a row.
Yes, all those details of the production.
And I have to analyse how I functioned in the group, what I found out about myself. I know I was so frustrated at times when we couldn't agree.
Yes. So did one person emerge as the leader?
Sophia did. That was okay. She helped us work out exactly what to do for the production, and that made me feel better, I suppose.
When you understood what needed doing?
Yes. And Sophia did some research too. That was useful in developing our approach.
Like what?
Well, she found these articles from the 1950s about how relationships between children and their parents, or between the public and people like bank managers or the police, were shifting.
Interesting. And did you have any practical problems to overcome?
Well, in the final rehearsal, everything was going fine until the last scene. That's where the doctor's first patient appears on stage on his own.
The one in the wheelchair?
Yes. And he had this really long speech with the stage all dark except for one spotlight. And then that stuck somehow, so it was shining on the wrong side of the stage. But anyway, we got that fixed, thank goodness.
Yes, it was fine on the night.
But while you're here, Mia, I wanted to ask you about the year abroad option. Would you recommend doing that?
Yes, definitely. It's a fantastic chance to study in another country for a year.
I think I'd like to do it, but it looks very competitive. There's only a limited number of places.
Yes. So, next year, when you're in the second year of the course, you need to work really hard in all your theatre studies modules. Only students with good marks get places. You have to prove that you know your subject really well.
Right. So, how did you choose where to go?
Well, I decided I wanted a programme that would fit in with what I wanted to do after I graduate. So, I looked for a university with emphasis on acting rather than directing, for example. It depends on you. Then about 6 months before you go, you have to email the scheme coordinator with your top 3 choices. I had a friend who missed the deadline and didn't get her first choice, so you do need to get a move on at that stage. You'll find that certain places are very popular with everyone.
And don't you have to write a personal statement at that stage?
Yes.
Right. I'll get some of the final year students to give me some tips. Maybe see if I can read what they wrote.
I think that's a very good idea. I don't mind showing you what I did. And while you're abroad, don't make the mistake I made. I got so involved I forgot all about making arrangements for when I came back here for the final year. Make sure you stay in touch so they know your choices for the optional modules. You don't want to miss out doing your preferred specialisms.
Right.
Today, I want to talk about self-regulatory focus theory and how the actions of leaders can affect the way followers approach different situations. Self-regulatory focus theory is a theory developed by Torrey Higgins. He says that a person's focus at any given time is to either approach pleasure or avoid pain. These are 2 basic motivations that each and every one of us has, and they cause us to have different kinds of goals. Promotion goals in different life situations emphasize achievement. Prevention goals are oriented towards the avoidance of punishment. In a specific situation, our thoughts might focus more on promotion goals or more on prevention goals. The theory suggests that two factors affect which goals we are focusing on. First, there is a chronic factor. This factor is connected to a person's personality and says that each person has a basic tendency to either focus more on promotion goals or focus more on prevention goals as part of his or her personality. Second, there is a situational factor, which means that the context we are in can make us more likely to focus on one set of goals or the other. For example, we are more likely to be thinking about pleasure and to have promotion goals when we are spending time with a friend. In contrast, if we are working on an important project for our boss, we are more likely to try to avoid making mistakes and therefore have more prevention goals in our mind. Research has shown that the goals we are focusing on at a given time affect the way we think. For example, when focusing on promotion goals, people consider their ideal self, their aspirations and gains. They don't think about what they can lose, so they think in a happier mode. They feel more inspired to change. When people are focusing on prevention goals, they think about their ought self. What are they supposed to be? What are people expecting from them? They consider their obligations to others. As a result, they experience more anxiety and try to avoid situations where they could lose. Now that I have talked about the two focuses and how they affect people, I want to look at the idea that the way leaders behave, or their style of leading, can affect the focus that followers adopt in a specific situation. In talking about leadership, we often mention transformational leaders and transactional leaders. Transformational leaders, when interacting with their followers, focus on their development. In their words and actions, transformational leaders highlight change. Their speech is passionate and conveys a definitive vision. All of these things can encourage followers to think about what could be. In other words, they inspire a promotion focus in their followers. In contrast, transactional leaders focus on developing clear structures that tell their followers exactly what is expected of them. While they do explain the rewards people will get for following orders, they emphasize more how a follower will be punished, or that a follower won't get rewarded if his or her behavior doesn't change. In short, they emphasize the consequences of making a mistake. This emphasis will clearly lead followers to focus on avoiding punishment and problems. This is clearly a prevention focus. In conclusion, it is important to understand that one focus is not necessarily better than the other one. For a designer who works in a field where a lot of innovation is needed, a promotion focus is probably better. In contrast, a prevention focus, which causes people to work more cautiously and produce higher quality work, might be very appropriate for a job like a surgeon, for example. The main point of the research, though, is that the actions of leaders can greatly influence whether people approach a situation with more of a promotion focus or more of a prevention focus.